I didn't start this diary because I wanted to. I started it because I needed to remember what the first night felt like, in case we didn't get a second one. This is not a story about panic. It's a record of what we did, and why we stayed alive. A Prepper's Diary, The First Blast. Entry 5, The Cost of the Right Choice. Early morning, hour 36. The coughing pulled me out of sleep so abruptly that my heart was already racing before my eyes opened. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. That's what scared me. It was deep, low in his chest, the kind of cough that sounds like the body is trying to clear something that won't move. Each one ended with a wheeze that lingered just a moment longer than it should have, like air hesitating before deciding whether it could leave his lungs or not. I rolled onto my side and pushed myself up on one elbow, already scanning the room. The lantern still burned low and steady. Battery levels fine. Air monitor still green. Nothing else had changed, except him. He was curled inward, knees drawn up, one hand pressed flat against his chest like he was trying to hold something in. His breathing was fast, shallow, each inhale pulling hard, each exhale whistling faintly through tightened airways. I knelt beside him and placed my hand on his back. I could feel it immediately. The effort. His ribs expanding farther than they should, muscles between them tightening to pull air that wasn't cooperating. I started counting breaths without realizing I was doing it. 1, 2, 3. Too fast. I leaned closer and spoke softly. "I've got you, buddy. I'm right here. Slow breaths. In with me." I exaggerated my own breathing, letting him hear it. His eyes opened just enough to see me. They looked tired. That scared me more than the coughing. 36 hours since impact. I checked my watch. 36 hours. That number had become a dividing line in my mind. Before. After. 36 hours since the sky flashed white in the distance. 36 hours since Chicago stopped being a city and became a data point. We were far enough away to survive the blast itself. The shockwave had never reached us. No windows shattered. No structural damage. But fallout doesn't care about distance the same way explosions do. I ran the numbers again because numbers were something solid. Something real. Chicago Ground Zero estimates. 1,000 rads per hour. Distance to us. Roughly 100 to more 150 miles, depending on plume direction. Only about 10 to 15% of physical fallout particles would reach this far. That knocked initial exposure down to 100 to 150 rads per hour at peak. Time works in your favor with radiation. After about 36 hours, levels drop roughly 90%. That still leaves 10 to 15 rads per hour outside. That's not safe. That's not something you live in. But it's survivable. Briefly. I looked back down at my son. He didn't have the luxury of waiting for numbers to improve. The realization. The wheezing deepened. It wasn't panic-induced. It wasn't fear. It was physiological. Asthma doesn't care about preparedness levels or moral certainty. It cares about air. We had the medication. But it was upstairs, in the van. Because when the blast hit, speed mattered more than perfection. I felt my chest tighten, not from radiation, not from fear, but from the understanding that there was no alternative. This wasn't a debate. This was a requirement. I looked up. My wife was already awake. She sat rigidly against the wall, legs drawn in, arms wrapped around herself. Not shaking, not crying, just watching. Ready. She met my eyes. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. The decision had already been made by his lungs. The radio. Before I moved toward the gear, I reached for the radio. Not because I expected good news, because silence is worse than bad news. The unit sat on the shelf where I'd left it. Antenna extended, batteries still holding strong. I turned the dial slowly, letting static hiss and snap between frequencies. Emergency channels first, then local AM, then the civil defense band. For a moment, there was nothing, just the low, empty crackle of a world that had gone quiet. Then a voice cut through, not polished, not calm, but steady.
This is an emergency broadcast relay. Repeat, this is an emergency broadcast relay operating under continuity of government protocols.
I froze. The kids looked up immediately. So did my wife. I turned the volume down just enough so it wouldn't echo off the concrete walls. The voice continued.
There have been no additional nuclear detonations confirmed in the last 24 hours. Strategic nuclear forces remain at elevated readiness levels. NORAD and U.S. Strategic Command report no new launch signatures.
I felt something loosen in my chest. Just a fraction. No additional launches didn't mean safety, but it meant restraint. It meant someone was still counting. The announcer paused, likely listening to instructions fed to him in real time.
Cyber and communications disruptions are ongoing, but military cyber units and National Guard signal teams have re-established limited access to core command and control systems. Emergency governance remains in effect.
That one mattered. That meant this wasn't total collapse. Not yet.
Radiological monitoring stations report significant decay in airborne fallout levels across southern and south-central Michigan. Current estimates show a substantial reduction since initial plume passage.
I glanced at my watch again. 36 hours. The math tracked. Then came the line that mattered most.
Residents are strongly advised to remain indoors. Outdoor exposure should be limited to absolute life-threatening emergencies only. Protective equipment is recommended for any unavoidable exterior movement.
I looked down at my son. His breathing rattled again. Shallow, strained, stubborn. Life-threatening emergency. That phrase had a weight to it now. The voice softened slightly. Not in tone, but in cadence.
Emergency services are unavailable in most areas. Self-sheltering remains the primary survival strategy.
The transmission ended abruptly. Static rushed back in. I shut the radio off. The room felt heavier, not because of fear, because the decision had been confirmed. This wasn't panic. This wasn't impulse. This was doctrine. This was exactly the scenario we had planned for, and exactly the moment you hope never comes. I looked at my wife. She already knew. She always did. Risk assessment. If I went out, it had to be fast. Time was everything. Gamma radiation couldn't be stopped. It would pass through concrete, through walls, through me. But dose depended on duration, not armor. Alpha and beta particles were different. Those were the real contamination threat. Those stuck to dust, to fabric, to skin. Those could be blocked. A full suit would stop Alpha entirely. Beta too, as long as I didn't tear anything. A full-face respirator with P100 filters would stop particulate inhalation. No skin exposed, no kneeling, no touching anything unnecessary, no stirring dust. 10 minutes in, 15 at absolute maximum. Anything more than that started pushing into dangerous territory. I nodded once. My wife nodded back. That was it. Gearing up, I moved slowly on purpose. Rushing makes mistakes. Mistakes kill people you love. First, the base layer. Long sleeves, tight cuffs, everything tucked in. Then the suit. Tyvek. Stiff, loud, unforgiving. I stepped into it carefully, pulling it up inch by inch, making sure it didn't snag. The zipper sounded deafening in the sealed basement. I hated that sound. I taped the zipper seam, then the wrists, then the ankles. Gloves next. Nitrile first, then thicker outer gloves on top. Double layered. Boots went over the suit legs, not under. Tape again. Everything sealed. I checked myself in the small mirror we kept for this exact purpose. No gaps. No exposed skin. Then the respirator. I seated it carefully, pulling the straps tight in sequence. Top, middle, bottom. I exhaled hard. No leaks. Filters locked in place. P100. Rated to stop 99.97% of airborne particles. It wouldn't stop gamma, but it would stop everything else that could hitch a ride inside my lungs. The hood went up last. I felt sealed in, cut off, isolated. That's when it hit me. If something went wrong out there, they would never hear my voice again. The kids. They were watching, all three of them. Quiet, too aware. I knelt in front of them, the suit crinkling as I moved. Dad needs to get medicine, I said calmly. I'll be back really fast. Stay with Mom. The oldest nodded immediately. The middle one stared, eyes fixed on the mask. The youngest coughed again. That sound cut straight through everything else. The cabinet. My wife moved behind me. I heard the cabinet unlock. The locked one. She waited until the kids were turned away. Then she hugged me. Tight, pressing her face into my shoulder like she was trying to memorize the feel of me. Something cold slipped into my hand. Heavy, solid. My pistol. Her voice was barely there. Just in case. Then even quieter. Come back to us. I closed my hand around it. I nodded. If I tried to speak, I would have failed. Breaking containment. The plastic barriers peeled back one by one. Tape snapped loose. Each layer felt like crossing a threshold. Once I went upstairs, there was no pretending anymore. The house looked exactly like we had left it. Furniture untouched. Pictures still straight. Shoes by the door. No dust coating everything like in the movies. That somehow made it worse. It felt frozen, like time had simply stopped. Silence. No wind. No birds. No distant engines. Silence so complete it pressed inward. I paused at the front door longer than I meant to, listening, as if the world might warn me. It didn't. Outside. The door opened. Cold air rushed around the seals of my suit. The sky was pale, clean, too clean. The driveway looked normal. That was unsettling. I moved fast, straight to the van. The van. Unlocked. Of course it was. Her keys sat right where she always left them. I felt an unexpected laugh escape inside the mask. A memory. Me getting annoyed, telling her not to leave her purse and keys in the van. Every single time. Now it felt like a gift. I grabbed the inhaler and the spare medication. Checked my watch. 7 minutes. Too long already. The shoe. That's when I saw it. Near the tall bushes. A shoe, lying on its side. Something about it pulled my attention immediately. I told myself to leave it. I didn't. I walked closer. The Geiger counter clicked louder now. Faster. Then I saw the leg. My stomach dropped so hard it felt physical. I moved the branches aside. Recognition. It was her. The woman from the first day. The one who knocked. The one I turned away. She was lying on her side, half hidden, eyes open, face pale and still. She hadn't made it far. My mind flashed back instantly. Her voice, her eyes, the moment I closed the door. At the time, it had felt like the right decision. Protect the family, maintain containment, no unknowns. Now she was here. Dead, alone. If I had let her in, she would still be breathing. That realization hit like a physical blow. I stood there frozen, heart pounding so hard I could hear it inside the mask. This was the cost of the right choice. No decision without consequence. No clean hands. The Geiger counter screamed louder. That snapped me back. I couldn't help her now, and staying would only hurt the people who still depended on me. I turned away. Returning. Every step back felt heavier. Inside the house, I resealed everything with shaking hands. Down the stairs. I stripped the suit methodically. Boots, outer gloves, inner gloves, hood, mask. Each piece set aside carefully. I knocked. Decontamination. The door cracked open. The medicine went straight into soapy water. She wiped it down carefully. I wiped myself quickly. Neck, hands, face. Not perfect, but effective. The suit had done its job. Waiting. We gave him the medicine and waited. Minutes stretched, then slowly. His breathing eased. The wheeze softened. Not gone, but better. I sat back against the wall, exhaustion finally crashing over me. After the medicine, we didn't celebrate when his breathing slowed. No cheering, no relief-filled laughter. We just listened. My wife stayed kneeling beside our youngest, 4 years old. One hand on his chest, the other brushing sweat-damp hair off his forehead. Like if she kept contact, she could anchor him to the room. I sat across from them on the floor, back against the wall, watching the rise and fall of his small ribs. The wheeze softened. The spaces between breaths stretched just enough to notice. He wasn't better, but he was stable, and right now, that was everything. Quiet work. Nobody spoke for a while. Then my oldest stood up, 8 years old. Old enough to understand more than he should. He didn't ask what to do. He just started helping. He checked the water jugs like he'd seen me do 100 times, tightened a cap, straightened a container, counted quietly under his breath. My middle boy, 6, followed him, lining up the food bins so the labels faced out, like we were running a store and not hiding underground. Small things, but deliberate. My wife met my eyes over our youngest head and gave the smallest nod. They were adapting, not because we gave a speech, because this is what families do when there's no one else coming. Adapting. The world above us wasn't coming back the way it was. We all knew that now. But down here, the systems were holding. The air was clean. The power was steady. The routines mattered. We adjusted without calling it adjustment. Dinner became portions. Bedtime became shifts. Noise became a choice. Not because we were broken, because we were learning how to live in what remained. Strength. I watched my wife move through the room, calm, focused, unshakable. She didn't wait for permission, didn't spiral, didn't fall apart in front of them. She just did what needed doing, and somehow made it feel normal enough for our boys to breathe, even when one of them already couldn't. I looked at my sons again, 8, 6, and 4, curled under a blanket, medicine finally giving him room to rest. They were growing up in a world that would demand more from them than it ever should. But they wouldn't be weak. They wouldn't be alone. They would learn from us. And they would become the kind of men who don't panic when things get dark, because they've already lived through dark and kept moving anyway. What remains? We are scared. That hasn't changed. But fear doesn't mean failure. It means we're paying attention. It means we still have something to protect. The world outside may be broken, but inside these walls, we are still a family, still thinking, still working, still adapting. And as long as we have that, we have a way forward.